G'day everyone, this is Greg Ryan and welcome to episode 34 of Rare and Resilient 1 in 5,000 podcast where we're talking IA-ARM. And today we are very fortunate to be joined by Noah, who's 14 years old from Ohio in the United States, who was born with IA-ARM, as well as his mum, Amy. G'day Noah and Amy, how are we?
Hey, we're good.
We're doing good over here.
That's great to hear. So what we're going to do is we're going to get Amy to have a chat to Noah and ask him some questions and talk about his experiences with IA. Over to you, Amy.
Are there things that you would like people to know about having imperfect anus?
It sucks sometimes a bunch. It is treatable, which is nice. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Do you find, Noah, that sometimes it's easier to be open and to talk about it, and sometimes it feels a little more awkward?
Yes.
Okay. So have you always been open about sharing about your condition with people?
No, I mean, I actually, maybe 4 years ago, I was going to tell my entire basketball team about my condition because I was a little too enthusiastic about it. And I had a complete mental breakdown over the issue.
Yeah, well, you had something happen that you felt violated your privacy before you even got a chance to really talk to people about it, right?
Yeah, so what happened there is pretty much during my basketball thing, I have to wear pull-ups because I have a constant drip due to my condition. And so I went into a public bathroom at the facility that we were doing our basketball thing at, and another kid on actually my team came in and was pretty much bullying me about the thing.
Yeah.
And now looking back, I probably would have been like, get the hell out of here. Like back then I was very timid and scared about it, but yeah.
Well, what had happened was that, if I remember correctly, the child he got curious about what Noah was doing because Noah has what we call his go bag. And that's a bag that contains all the supplies that he needs to deal with his condition when he's in public. And that's where his pull-ups and things like that are stored, and wipes and things like that he may need depending on what happens when he's in the bathroom. And that child was curious about what Noah was doing. He kind of heard crinkling paper or something like that. And so he actually climbed up and looked over the toilet stall and violated Noah's privacy by actually looking in on him when he was doing all of that, changing his pull-up. So, and then he went and talked to other kids about it. So that was
that did not help at all.
Right. And that's actually when we met Greg, because
the worst part is he was the coach's son. So
right.
That makes it really awkward.
And you know what was interesting is the coach actually happened to be a doctor as well. He was an OBGYN. So you would think that he would have had a level of sensitivity in handling that with his son and with the other players, but he actually really didn't. And I was really shocked by that, because as an OBGYN, of course, he would be one of the first medical professionals that are aware of a baby having, an anal rectal malformation. And so I guess I just assumed there would be some finesse in handling that situation, but there wasn't. But anyway, that's how we met you, Greg. If you remember correctly, I had reached out in one of the big support groups and just said I had this situation happen with my son, and it was very sad for him, and he was overwhelmed and felt very alone. And Greg, you were very, very kind to give us time. I think we did a video call as well back then, actually.
Yep.
And you talked to Noah, and we've been awfully glad to know you ever since.
Yeah, I can totally understand the trauma that Noah would have gone through at that time, especially when you're in the privacy of a toilet cubicle and you would think that you're actually safe. I tell you what, Noah, to be able to go out and still play with the team, that's incredible. If I'd have been in your position, I just would have ran and hide and not been seen for I don't know how long.
The funniest thing is now I wear pull-ups all the time and stuff, and so just wiping your butt with toilet paper after you're done in a stall, and so I do it so quickly that it's just I could do it with my eyes closed pretty much.
Right.
And so it doesn't even bother me if someone looked in on me, and I'm also super comfortable with my body and stuff, so I don't mind if I'm not wearing my pants when I'm going past the neighbor, the window. In the neighbor.
I hope that's not true.
No, it's completely true. I'm sure they've seen me many times.
Fortunately,
across the street neighbors, like our window in the front.
Well, fortunately, we live on a treed lot, so I'm sure the neighbors are grateful for that. I will say that's one thing about being a family that has someone with this particular condition is that you do learn to be really comfortable with nudity and with people's bodies. And because we have to help Noah do all of his daily tasks. He does a daily enema.
She gets
I get the full view.
She
Yeah,
gets
right.
the full view of the entire rear end.
That's right.
And
Okay.
everything that goes along with it.
Yeah. But the good news about that is that, and I think we've talked about that maybe a little bit in the book too, is just how close we are as a family. I remember Noah mentioning that, and it really touched my heart because we really are really particularly close in large part because of having to spend all that time together. Noah relies on us to help him do what other people find really easy once they get to a certain age, and he has to have us, and we're glad to have him.
And how do your siblings cope with everything, Noah, with all the extra attention you have to get?
You think like, because like I get most of the attention at the house, they'd probably be like a little bit like not supportive about the whole thing, but they're actually really supportive. They don't have a single problem with the whole system. Like my brother actually has learned how to do like the whole medical routine and stuff. And so he like helped me out with that.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're really supportive. Like I'm pretty sure everybody in the house knows the basic outline.
Actually, that was one thing. So COVID has obviously not been fun for the entire world, but when we were on lockdown here in the United States, here in our state of Ohio for a period of time, we were always so busy before that we had to be super regimented. And Noah's routine tends to work best on a routine. You know, his body does best if he does the same. He's on a bowel management program that involves an enema, a daily enema. So we do that at the same time every day, but we were always in a hurry to get through it because we had so many other activities going on. So when everything shut down and locked down, we were here, and he actually got an opportunity to learn how to be a little bit more independent with his medical routine. He can do the entire thing himself now, except for actually holding the enema line.
And I actually do have a system on that idea. Like I drew out some like specs for a plan, like a machine to do that part for me.
Yes.
Oh, wow. So going back to the incident at the basketball, do you think that actually changed you once you were exposed in such a way?
Nah, probably not. No, I think age has changed me probably.
I think the change came in learning to work through that is what I observed as his mom, learning that, you know, he wouldn't always be able to rely on us for all the support he needed, that he really needed the interaction with other people like you, Greg, other people with his condition, because you are the folks who really understand. We love Noah, we empathize, but you can sympathize because you've walked his shoes and you know what it's like to carry that particular burden and be on that particular journey. So I think that's something that's really important as kids begin to get older, that they do have relationships with some other folks that have their condition. So I think it's wonderful that there's so many things available with this podcast and with some of the different groups on Facebook and other social media where kids can get support. And Noah actually is going to be doing Youth Rally for the first time this year. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'm actually super excited for that. So
explain what Youth Rally is.
So Youth Rally is a program designed for kids with imperfect anus or probably just others like things like that are related.
Any bowel or bladder condition,
right.
I think. Yeah.
Yep.
And so you just go there and you meet other kids, you do fun activities, just like any other camp, but they also have like doctors and stuff that can do your routines and stuff with you.
The last couple of years, it's been virtual because of COVID. They were hoping to have it in person this year, but it, again, because there was a big surge in the United States back in December and January of COVID, they had to move it to virtual again because they just weren't even sure that, first of all, it'd be safe for the campers to be together from all over the country like that. And also because they weren't sure they could even get enough staff because, you know, the doctors and nurses who are there are all volunteers and they were needed in the field. So it's going to be virtual. That's coming up in July, and Noah's super pumped, and I'm hoping that he'll make some more connections.
Yeah,
as well.
I'm really excited for that actually.
Mm-hmm.
I know how important Youth Rally has been to so many families and kids. It changes their lives so much because, you know, it makes them feel not alone, and it makes them be able to talk on a level that other kids just can't understand. That's what you were saying before, Amy, like to have that connection is so important. So Noah, what happens when you have certain foods and drinks that don't agree with you? Do you keep trying them, or do you just say, no, I'm not using that anymore, it doesn't work, so I'll just move on?
Yeah, so with I don't know the scientific or medical terms for specific foods, but I do know that like apples that have a lot of fiber in them, I can't do like too many because it makes my poop extremely runny and I leak a lot during the day if I eat a lot of that. And like for constipated, like more like gas and stuff, like it also does, like it makes me constipated if I have too much like carbonated drinks or like bread or chips or crackers or something like that.
Yeah, just so everybody understands. So Noah's on a bowel management program that involves an enema. And as I was saying before, it really is routine driven. His body works best. So the way it works is he gets up in the morning, he eats breakfast, and then he lets his colon rest for an hour. And then at that point, he starts the enema procedure. And he does that by kneeling. We have a solution that goes in. It's Castile soap, liquid glycerin, and saline, and we mix that all together, and then it goes in while he's kneeling over the course of 20 or 30 minutes or so. He's down on the ground, and then when his colon is irritated, which is what those ingredients do, he sits on the toilet and he empties over a period of about 35 to 40 minutes usually. And it is a daily commitment, and it's a lot of work, but it works extremely well for Noah because he is now what is called socially continent, and that means he stays completely clean basically every day of the year as long as he stays on routine like that. So as he was saying, what throws him off sometimes is different foods that he eats. Because of the enema, he's not as restricted as some people who try to manage, who have maybe a lower perforated anus. He's got high IA. He was born with high IA, which tends to mean you do wind up being on enemas most of the time. Yeah. So that's what works for Noah anyway. But the food thing, we always say he can't go too far on either side of the spectrum, of the fiber spectrum. So if he eats too many things with fiber, like fruits and vegetables in their most pure state, then he will have what we call breakthrough poo. And that's where he has accidents. That's what I've always called it.
I don't think we call it that.
Okay, I call it that. No one doesn't call it that.
I just call it diarrhea, but okay.
Yeah, so that's what my husband and I have always called it. So then that can happen if he has too much white rice, white bread, things of that nature, even like greasy fast food and things like that, then he will get really constipated. And so his enema isn't very effective. So sometimes those are the only things that ever mess him up though. And what we've learned is that if he does have white rice or white bread or something like that, just the next day, he just needs to compensate by like having apples. So we just try to keep him there in the middle of the fiber spectrum, and he does really well. He does not do well with carbonated drinks, as he was saying. That causes gas. It seems to exacerbate his constipation, and it's not a good time.
Right, but I like
them. I don't blame you, mate. I don't blame you.
I also like apples and chips, so I mean, it's kind of good, right?
So initially you said you were very private about your IA. So when did that start to change, Noah? And Amy, when did you see him start to change in that regard?
I think it started to change probably going into my teens, I would say, because I don't know, like now I think of myself as this super ripped hot dude that just walks around. I think it really comes down to the amount of confidence you have in yourself. Yeah. So like, yeah, I have some pretty strong confidence in myself, I would say.
Yeah, I would concur. I think that the incident that happened with basketball, I'm trying to think when that was, Greg. I think Noah was probably 9 when that happened. It was about 5 years ago when we met you, I think.
Yep, that would be about right. Yep.
That, from what I understand, is super normal for kids with IA to get that feeling of being self-conscious and exposed, or the fear of exposure is like super common around that 8, 9, 10, 11 age grade. So it was super normal the way he was feeling, even if he hadn't had that specific experience, I think. But as he was saying, he started to transition after talking to you. And just as he got older, it was what we always really wanted for Noah, is that he would, on his own terms, become confident in sharing who he is, because we don't think this is anything to hide. It's nothing to be ashamed of. I'm so proud of him, of how he's handled it, how he handles himself, how he handles his routine. I'm proud of our family, how we have worked through so much. And Noah is just a great, great kid. He faithfully does his routine. He just does what needs to be done. I'm really proud to be his mom.
I'm really good at routines.
Yes.
Just really good at routines. So it helps. Like I obviously got the routine gene, which is good. So that helps a lot because I'm really good at routines. Yes. But yeah.
Did that coincide with him getting onto this bowel management program? When did that happen?
No, actually, so our local children's hospital tried to manage Noah's care until he was about 2.5, almost 3. I actually wish they told us earlier that they wouldn't really be able to handle imperforate anus. They tried his surgeries, they tried managing his constipation, and it was 2.5 years of just absolute hell. It's actually really hard to think about still. Sorry.
No, that's
because it was just really hard on this little body. And constipation, it sounds so simple for people who don't have an anorectal malformation. I think, oh, I'm just a little constipated, but this is like painful and difficult.
And possibly lethal.
Yeah, correct. Absolutely. So it was really challenging to try to, and then the normal methods that would work for a body that was installed correctly, that doesn't work for kids with imperforate anus very well at all usually. So for 2.5, almost 3 years, we really struggled with our local children's hospital until finally one day they were just like, yeah, we can't help you anymore. You're going to need to reach out. So they suggested that we visit the colorectal center at Cincinnati Children's. And we subsequently found out that's where people from all over the world were going. And at that time, Dr. Penyer and Dr. Levitt were both there, and they were well known for the PSARP, procedure, which was what they attempted at our children's hospital, but it wasn't very successful. Long story short, we went to Cincinnati. Noah was 3 when we went down there, and they redid everything. And what's cool about that too is that Noah has associated kidney issues because of how high his fistula was. So they were able to reconstruct his urethra. They were able to redo his pull through. And then they were able to.
I don't know any of these words actually mean,
yeah.
but I actually would like to learn more about like the surgery they actually used on me. I think that would be a really cool thing.
Yeah, let's do it.
About. Yeah. I actually was thinking like I do not want to have the surgery where they put in the what do you call that?
He doesn't want to have a Mitrofanov
right.
or the he doesn't want
a Malone.
Malone, right?
But I would like to like think of other alternatives. Like I've been like thinking about some other ideas, like other surgeries and ideas, like obviously like they have not made like muscle yet, so you can't really replace. I'm sure that they could probably make some kind of like robotic thing.
That's what no one's hoping.
People are smart,
right?
I mean, they already make like walking robots, so what's the difference?
Well, and it would be nice because that's what I was telling you, Greg, is that when we were down in Cincinnati originally, when we first went down, they got us set up with a bowel management program even before he had all of his big surgery to redo everything. We spent, that surgery was a 3-week long whole thing. But when we came back, they tweaked it for us. And then that particular setup, when I think he was almost 4, when we were all done with all those procedures again, that has now worked for 10 or 11 years. So that's pretty impressive. We sometimes have to adjust the ingredients or the amount of saline a little bit because he's gotten bigger. But other than that, it's worked really well. So I don't think that having that done was any part of why he felt self-conscious. I don't think that was it. I think it was just, we just are a society that tends to hide, anything under your clothes, and you don't talk about the problems you have down south,
Yeah, like probably like during the issue, like I was very, it was very like it did not make me feel comfortable at all. Like I was very
maybe shut down or
closed off.
Yeah.
Like during that, it was very not good for the confidence part.
Right. The mental health at that point was very bad, I think. And I've heard people talk since about the wisdom of maybe getting a child of that age in to see a therapist. And I think that would actually be, if I had anything to redo, I think we've done a lot of things right since Noah was born. But I think one thing that I wish that we had done was to maybe start him with a therapist when he was.
I still want a therapist.
Yeah, right. We've actually been talking about that recently. Just a different person to listen.
I can't emphasize enough how important the mental health side of it is. And I've interviewed child psychologists on here, and we're very fortunate now that the major colorectal centres do include having psychology and social workers there to help from that perspective. And I really found it interesting, Amy, that was 13 years ago when you were just talking about all the problems you had at the old hospital, and you got emotional just thinking about it.
Yeah, because nobody wants their child to be in pain.
I was put out for most of like my surgeries and stuff, but they were like in the room watching. So it's probably extremely, like they probably have PTSD at this point, like over the issue of IDS.
I think that's not far off, actually, for Noah and for us, really.
I think I like remember being hooked up to like some machines and stuff like once, but I'm pretty sure they knocked me out for pretty much every surgery I had.
I say the same thing, that the parents are the ones that do the hardest in the early years because we don't remember.
Right.
And I've spoken to so many parents who have needed to talk to someone as well to deal with it, because you can't go through what parents go through with that. Look, you went through it till 4 years when he had to get his redo done. And that's a really salient point for anyone who's listening, whose child may have had the surgery by not necessarily a specialist. And it's no one to blame, because the pediatricians at the local hospitals where the child's born or whatever you get transferred to, they might only see one anorectal malformation patient in their lifetime. You can't emphasize enough how important these colorectal centers are. And most of them do a third of their patients are redo surgeries.
Right.
And
agreed.
And Noah's a prime example of having that redo surgery has changed his life, I'd say.
Absolutely. For sure. Absolutely. The other thing too is that I think that until, for some patients, they have to be at that age of 2 or 3 when you begin to toilet train for the parents to really understand, oh, this isn't manageable anymore. And so that, I think, can play into, you just stick with your local hospital. And I never want anybody to feel like less than supported about the choices they make as a parent. But my biggest thought is, I wish we'd taken Noah to a colorectal center from day one. I think somebody may have even vaguely mentioned Cincinnati to us back then, but at that point it was 4 or 5 hours away from home. And that seemed like, 1,000 years away from home, because we had this little baby that we hadn't expected to have any issues at all. It was all a surprise the day that he was born. They actually missed it on Noah's initial check. One of the things that you look for when you have a newborn is an anal opening. It's like right on there. It's like nursing 101. And that day, for whatever reason, that nurse forgot to do that part.
Yeah,
and
probably. So, I'm sure they're like very comfortable with their job, but I'm sure like their least favorite part is like just splitting a baby's butt crack and looking in it.
Well, it was just unfortunate because Noah was 12 hours old before we found out. So that was just very difficult, because when they went to do his 12-hour check, he was born around 12 or 1 in the afternoon. So it was between 12 and 1 in the middle of the night when they took him to go check him, and then they did find it. And so this was very shocking to us. We had noticed like Noah's blowing like little bubbles. We thought it was so cute, but it was actually because all that air and gas was trapped inside him, and he actually could have died. And so for a number of years, I just thought about all the what ifs and what could have been. But a friend really counseled me as a mom, and I've taken this to heart for other things with Noah and with my other children, to say that, but that didn't happen. That isn't what happened. And to try to look at what was positive, even out of a very human mistake that woman made that day, was that we had 12 hours with Noah. We had 12 hours with our little baby when we didn't know anything was wrong. Yep. And it didn't really change or affect Noah's life. But that was the only time that our older son, who was 4 at that time, got to hold Noah for 6 months, because as soon as they found out, he got rushed to the local children's hospital from the little hospital where I delivered in the middle of the night. They took him in a little glass box by special transport, and then it was surgery after surgery. And there were so many things going on in his little baby body.
How many surgeries did I have?
I actually don't even know.
But there were a lot. We're going to say about 21 probably.
Oh, there's more than that, I'm sure.
Okay,
overall.
about 50 now.
Because they consider all the scopes, the type of surgery and stuff. But anyway, that was the beginning of a long journey of a lot of painful surgeries and recoveries. And so you couldn't have a 4-year-old hold this little baby who had a urostomy and a colostomy and like all this stuff going on. So that's what I guess I've learned as a parent, is that even when things don't go exactly right, when you look back over this journey that we have walked through and will continue to walk through for the rest of Noah's life, even the mistakes wound up being something that, I don't want to sound trite, it's not that the mistakes were good, but it's just that even in the things that were difficult or didn't go the way that they should have gone, we learned something, or we experienced something we wouldn't have otherwise experienced.
She really just, this podcast, wow, she just completely made this podcast work out.
Sense of humor, I think, is something I've noticed with people who have this particular deformity. I think you have to have a sense of humor. Our family has learned to find things funny that probably wouldn't be funny to anybody else. I remember
like things just go so bad, you just have to laugh sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I remember even in the NICU, which is like the special area of the hospital for babies who are really suffering in some way. My husband and I we thought of all the cliches that didn't apply to our child. Like, no one could ever call him an a-hole,
Actually,
And,
they can.
So
also, I just quoted that last one
yeah.
from Star Trek.
And we used to talk about how they should have awareness ribbons. Back then, there wasn't anything for imperfect anus that we were aware of. And so we said they should be like brown ribbons, like the awareness ribbons you wear on your shirt. So you picked prettier colors for yours, Greg, than we had in mind.
I want a 1 in 5,000 sweatshirt. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
My question is, why is the one not inside the 5,000? It's 1 in 5,000.
Hang on, mate. You're not supposed to be asking me questions. If you look at our logo, the O in the 1, the shape of the O, it's like a little baby.
Okay. I never noticed that part. Obviously I noticed the butt-shaped part.
Yeah. But so that's why I wanted that.
Well, it's been a wild journey with Noah. I wouldn't want to do it with anybody but Noah. He has been really a trooper through the whole thing. I can't say we handle everything correctly, but Noah has grown and matured, and I think he uses his experiences with imperfect anus to really look differently at the rest of the world as well. So he is very compassionate.
No, not really.
He really looks for fairness.
Well, yeah, there's that, but
yeah, you like things to be fair. You worry about things being accessible to other people. So that's something I think as he gets older, I'm hoping he'll be able to use his story and his voice, to benefit a lot of other people.
I can't emphasize how much his voice by people listening to this podcast now is going to change so many lives, especially of younger boys and girls who they're getting to that 8, 9, 10-year-old stage and I was very similar to you, Noah. That's when I probably started to realize I was different. And because up to about that age, you don't really know that you're that different, because I just expected everyone to went to the toilet and had accidents and like I did. You didn't really understand till you get to a certain age, and that's when you're sort of like, oh, hang on. So I can totally understand what you were saying there. And you know how you say you'd like to know more about the PSAP?
right.
Well, recently I had Dr. Penyer on the podcast, and he was wonderful. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you Dr. Penyer's details, and you can ring him or email him, and I'm sure he will love to talk to you as you were one of his patients.
That would be great. I'm sure Noah would enjoy that very much.
Yeah, I would actually.
I know you would. He loves researching and finding out more about it. I think we both wish there's still a lot that science doesn't know about why this happens. They have a few theories, but nothing it's very shocking to me. I mean, 1 in 5,000 is rare, but it's not that rare. There are an awful lot of babies born across the world with this condition every single year. And I think that we wish there'd be more emphasis put on it. It's not that it would fix or cure anything, but if you know why something happens, hopefully you can work to prevent it for other babies.
Yeah. I've said to many parents that the greatest scientific minds and doctors in the world have been trying to work out for 200 years what's caused it, and they haven't been able to cause it. So trying to work it out, it'll just beat yourself up, and you'll never get the answer you want at the moment. So that's sort of like my attitude towards it.
What again?
Towards the cause.
Cause?
Greg feels like maybe knowing the cause isn't that important.
Sure it is. I mean, it's super important. You can improve all your surgeries and stuff over that as well.
If you knew why it happened.
Right.
Maybe.
So, Amy, you want to mention something about taking photos?
I do. So when Noah was first born, I was very self-conscious about the fact that he had so many bags and tubes and surgery scars. And I was so concerned. I remember being very concerned as a first-time mom of a child who had any type of medical issue. I was very concerned that he would feel different or look different. And so I didn't take pictures. I deliberately would hide the colostomy bag and the urostomy bag, and I'd position things around him so you couldn't see the bags and the tubes. And I wish that I hadn't done that now all the time. I think some of it was fine, but I remember being at a local portrait studio when Noah was small, trying to hide all of that to get a family photo, or to get a photo with his older brother. And I understand now that was just part of Noah's journey. And maybe it was my own way of learning that I don't have to hide that. There's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing to be secretive about that.
Liked it personally because it would have made me like mechanical baby, super mechanical baby. That's beautiful.
Yeah, he had a lot of extra pieces and parts, but I think it's fine to take pictures without it showing. What I'm saying is I wish I hadn't felt obligated to hide it because I was so worried that it would bother him later or it wouldn't look right in pictures. And now I just wish that I had more pictures because I have a few that like kind of got captured accidentally, but like I kind of miss being able to look back and know what his colostomy looked like now that it's closed up, or to know what it looked like, just so that he could even see part of his journey. It's sort of like a journal of what he went through. I mean, it is very impressive. He can see the scars, but he doesn't necessarily know what was in all the places where the scars are. So I would say document your child's history. If you want to write it down and journal it, that's great, but pictures are really important.
I actually have a pretty good guess who's in place them. Tubes.
Yeah, a lot of tubes.
Yeah, no, that's great, Amy. And actually, I can actually relate to that, because back in my day, like, they would never have taken photos of your colostomy or whatever back then. And I have this strange thing that I see the stomas. Maybe I've blanked them out, but I sort of, like, part of me just can't relate to it, because I haven't seen photos of me with the stomas. I've seen the photos with the binder around my waist. Because I didn't see the actual stomas, there's part of me just sort of like goes into denial. I think I suppose I could say.
And it's so overwhelming. You sometimes don't even remember all the things that were attached to your child. And I think it's important to remember the parts of their story, as they evolved and changed.
So Noah, if you were talking to Noah, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, what would you be saying to him right now?
With like the technology these days, you probably will be fine.
Okay.
Like, probably. Like, you're probably going to have a few like bladder infections, maybe a few constipation,
Okay.
Yeah, you're going to have some issues along the way, but you'll probably come through fine.
Okay.
But,
yeah, there's a solution for every problem. That's what our family has said. The one thing that new parents are just discovering and older parents know for sure, and that I wish we could communicate more to the families and friends of people who have a IA person living in their household, or are related to someone with IA, is that this is a condition that is life absorbing. Our life revolves around Noah's routine, our family life and Noah's life for sure.
I do not like that personally, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a big responsibility.
Like just today when I got up really late, because I've just been getting up really late lately. And my mom had some like a meeting she had to do for a new homeschool co-op we're doing, because I'm homeschooled and stuff. So like I have to do my stuff. So she had to have her meeting outside.
So I think that, but so just the understanding that, we have to be on a routine for him, and we have to get up at a certain time. And so that means if we're up late at night, it makes it tricky in the morning to get him up early to get through all his stuff to get to the next event. Keeping that in mind for sporting events and things like that starts super early in the morning. Noah sometimes has to get up at like 5 a.m. to get everything done before he can go do that. And it's not that there's not some flexibility in when we do it. It's just his body does best in this particular routine. So the other concern too is just that we really have to be, like, with COVID and just any virus or any illness that really throws him off. Like we were concerned about him getting COVID. He did wind up getting COVID, unfortunately, and he developed long COVID, which was difficult. It caused some additional kidney issues that he's been dealing with for the last year. So a lot of his symptoms have now resolved, yay, but that was rough. So just even understanding that, we might stay away from exposure to germs and things like that in a way, or even just being sick and congested when you're doing an enema isn't super fun when you're, face down on the floor for half an hour.
Yeah. Also, I also just would say that it's not a fun time to get sick in general.
Right.
So,
but it's extra not fun when you have a whole daily routine that has to be done, whether you're sick or not.
Right. I actually remember, like, I think it's having like it was probably the flu, like a couple times, and you're just so weak. It's like actually hard to stay on your knees.
I think I would want to make sure that people knew that it actually does get better. Like, this is IA is with you always, but your kid's going to be okay. He's going to learn to cope. Your family is going to be able to handle and deal with it. He's going to find friends and a mate who are going to be able to, there's no pot so warped you can't find a lid to fit, right? So that is what we think will happen with Noah. He'll wind up with a special group of folks surrounding him, just like he has right now with our family and friends.
That's so wonderful. And Amy, what would you say to Amy, the mother, 14 years ago?
I think I would say this is going to be hard, but it's going to change your family in ways that you will understand are good. even though it's hard, that even though it will always be hard, it will also be good, that there are things that your child is going to show you through what he deals with that are going to inspire you and challenge you and going to teach you how to be a better person, and that the rest of the kids will be okay. I didn't always know when Noah was born. He knows this story. His brother was 4, which is a tough time already to get a new sibling.
What story do I know?
You hear in a second. So there was a story when we were in the hospital and Noah was having his first surgeries, day 1 of his life, day 2, I guess. Somebody brought 2 stuffed animals to the hospital for my older son and told him one was for Noah. They were identical little puppies. One was for Noah and one was for Jameson, our older son. And they said, you can name them, and one's for your brother and one's for you. Do you remember what they called them?
Like they're almost always, my siblings are almost always supportive. You know what I'm saying? Almost.
At the age of 4, it might have been hard to understand. But
yeah, a little bit. But
my older son named one of the little dogs I like you, and one of the little dogs I don't like you.
Yeah, and next time we get some teddy bears, I'm giving I don't like you to Jane.
But I think that's the other thing too, is if you have other children, whether they were older than your child with IA or younger than your child with IA, they're going to be okay too. This will change them because it's changing you and it's changing the child who has imperfectness, but it is overall for the rest of us a positive thing, because we will never look at the world the same way again. We will look to see how the world accommodates people with special conditions and disabilities. We will look to make things more fair than they already are. And we're going to advocate our rear ends off, pun intended.
That's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. So Noah and Amy, I can't thank you enough for being so open today. It's been wonderful. Noah, you're going to change the lives of so many kids that are going to listen to this. And Amy, you're going to change the lives of so many parents who listen to this, because you're going to give them hope and knowing that it's going to be okay.
It really is. And also just know, everyone, that there are those of us who understand how very hard it is. We've got the people who have the condition and the people who have raised them, and we understand. So reach out for help, look for support. We're here.
All righty. See you later.
Great to chat with you, Greg. Have a good night.
Bye.
See you later. Bye-bye. Bye.